Hello and welcome to the International Critical Incident Stress Foundation CISM Live Series, where we connect with critical incident stress management subject matter experts live on YouTube. My name is Kelly Hall, and I'm the development coordinator and the host of our CISM Live Series. If you enjoy the content being shared today, please consider giving this video a like and subscribe to ICISF's YouTube channel so you don't miss out the next time we go live. This recording has been pre-recorded due to technical difficulties this week, but we'll be sure to try and get that resolved between now and next Wednesday. Today, we're joined by guest speakers Ollie Barber and Charlotte Copeland. Ollie has a special interest in psychological trauma and has presented on trauma care and critical incident stress management. He has worked with victims of road crashes, sea disasters, and victims of terrorist attacks. Ollie has a keen interest in CISM training and is a qualified authorized instructor for the ICISF. Charlotte is a psychotherapist and the managing director of SafeHaven CISM, providing crisis, disaster, and trauma responsive mental health care, and SafeHaven Trauma Center, a specialist treatment center for psychological trauma based in Greater Manchester, UK. Having specialized in psychological trauma, Charlotte has consulted on national and global projects and provided training and support across a range of sectors. So today we're going to be getting into your World Congress 16 presentation preview. And your presentation is titled SafeHaven CISM Response to the Recent Beirut Explosion. So how did SafeHaven get involved with the explosion in Beirut?
Well, Kelly, it's good to be with you this afternoon. We can say that here from both Ireland and the UK. Sorry, we're not over there with you, but there are other reasons for that. Miss everybody over there this year because both Charlotte and myself love to visit Baltimore and participate in the World Congress on our second year invitation. SafeHaven provides services to both government and non-government agencies and indeed private industry, some security firms. And some of those government agencies and non-government agencies are located in what we call red spots. They're areas around the world where most people don't go, if I might put it, on holidays from that aspect of it. So sadly, on the 4th of August 2020, we had an explosion in Beirut. Beautiful city. I'll tell you more about it if you tune into us at the session on the 26th. One of the organizations that was working in Beirut is one of our agencies. And with those agencies, we do a lot of pre-incident training with them. In other words, we have documentations like handouts in relation to stress management. We have them in multiple languages for the different countries that we would work in. We will also do training with them prior to their deployment, be it a government agency or non-government agency. So we're well known within those areas. Unfortunately, late on the 4th of August that afternoon, Charlotte received a call from one of our NGOs, and Charlotte will take it up from there.
Thanks, Ollie. And Kelly, thanks. It's great to be here with you. So yes, I mean, for us, as Ollie says, you know, as a general rule, I mean, we do get calls from organisations who've never worked with us before, but they have a crisis. However, for many of them, they've done a lot of prep work, whether it's putting policies and we write those and operating procedures. And with this organisation, we've done all that, and so they, you know, have a peer network that was actually just about to be launched as this happened. And that meant they had a peer network that worked globally across all these time zones. But of course, you know, when there is a major situation such as that, and you have, you know, potentially people are highly traumatized, what you really do want is you want the CISM team to have the mental health professionals on board, just because there is, you know, we have many more interventions open to us than peers alone when they're only working together as a peer network. And all of the safety and safeguarding that goes with that, as well as the expertise and training. And so for us, we were already somebody that was on their call list and part of their policy system, that in a major event such as that, we were on call, and we were asked, would it be appropriate for us to respond? And if so, what did we recommend and suggest, and how could we do that? So that was what happened at the time.
So when asked to respond to an incident as you were with Beirut, could you outline SafeHaven's system of strategic planning?
Sure. Do you want to start, Ollie, or am I going to take that?
You start this time and I'll finish.
Okay. So I think it's a great question, in all honesty, Kelly, because for anyone who is experienced and trained in CISM, they will be aware of the 5 T's. And Ollie, I'll hand over to you when you can talk. But I think one of the things that for us, Ollie will tell you, I've been in mental health for 20 years now, but prior to that, in what feels like another life, I was an electrical engineer, and I am a systems thinker. So I tend to have systems for everything. And for me, we have a system that collects data, enough data for us to be able to analyze the situation and then look at the 5 T's, because there is a certain quantity of information you need in order to be able to determine what kind of support is appropriate. Mm-hmm. So we have sort of 5 key steps we go through in that data collection to put that 5 T strategic response together. And that's particularly what we would call in shorthand, it's who, what, when, how, and risk. So when we're saying who, what we're really talking about is, who are the people that are impacted by this? However, there's an important qualifier here, which is also that we have a duty of care towards, depending on the remit, and that depends on who we're being brought in by. I think for many people, particularly when you do the training, you would look at that wide ripple effect and have a look at all of the potential parties that are impacted with that varying degrees of impact. Mm. However, in real life, as I would call it, in real life application, you really do have to understand the clear boundary lines around duty of care and who we're expected to be responsible for. And that will depend who the organisation has a responsibility towards or not. And there can be real legal implications to be outside of that. So you really have to be quite clear before you start. So we've got, where are those lines of delineation? And then who are those people within that? So once we know that boundary line, who are the people? And the people at the epicenter are always very easy to identify, but as you consider the ripple effect out, it can get very easy to miss people who are not in that immediate core. So we look at that, and we'll ask quite a lot of questions about that, and we have to understand an organisation and how they function in order to be able to evaluate that appropriately. So that would be the who. The what is really what resources are available to us as a CISM team. So when brought in by an organisation to provide support, our job is to immediately support those people who are affected, but our teams will be focused on those that are most highly traumatised. So that will include some people at the epicenter. It might include some people who this then re-traumatizes them because they've recently had something happen to them. So they're not always at the epicenter, but they'll be the most traumatized individuals. Now, what you have to say, and as you're dealing with organizations like we do, like they're on a global scale and potentially there's an awful lot of people involved, you have to be able to determine what additional resources do you have at your disposal. And then the CISM team will take responsibility for working with the organisation to coordinate that. And examples from that can be peer support networks that are in place. So you've got your general sort of mental health awareness peers. You've got peers that would have some training in some kind of de-escalation process, like psychological first aid. You will then have potentially pastoral services, some organisations might have family liaison services, and what Ollie mentioned before, which are things like your information leaflets, etc. Intranet, that's one way. Comms channels to be able to put some communication out across the board to personnel, and then to be able to specify other elements of communication to personnel. So you have to look at all of those resources, and that comes under the what. So what do we have available to us? Then we look at the when. So when are we being brought in? And when can we reach these individuals? So, that can depend on if it's remote support or if we're being deployed. It can depend on, is an event over? So in a large scale event, it's not necessarily immediately over because you've got a lot of recovery services ongoing. So whether it's an explosion, whether it's a train derailment or whatever it is, you might have the initial impact, but in truth, that the initial event has a prolonged period of time. So you have to look at all of that. Then we look at the how. So is this remote? Is it face-to-face? So we're being deployed. Is it a combination? So we have to look at that. And then finally, we have to look at risk. So there's two types of risk for us that we have to consider. We really have to consider that related to interventions. So that would be typically what you'd cover in the training. So suitability of an intervention, timing of an intervention, risks to the CISM team. But then you also have to look at logistical and implementation risk as well. And so that's the second phase. We have to consider those factors. And when we have all of that data together, then we can say, right, now we have a clearer picture about what we're being tasked with and what's available to us. Now we can look at the 5 T's. Ollie, would that be a good point to hand over to you?
Thanks, Charlotte. Yeah, it's an excellent question. I was listening to it and trying to sort of say, yeah, how did we actually do it? Because it came in late on a Saturday night, and straight away we're on Zoom trying to look at it. So I would always revert back to Jeff Mitchell's 5 T's and the strategic planning in the group training aspect of it. So some of the issues that we looked at first under teams, well, it was an explosion. So we needed information as to the outcome of that. Were our people, the agency we're working for, were they immediately involved in it, or were the bystanders? We know we knew at that stage from the information that we had that was vast. I was fortunate enough as an ex-military veteran to actually have members of the Irish battalion that had been down at the port side and had given us information that accommodation would be an issue in Beirut. Like the explosion took out an awful lot of living accommodation, because a lot of the living accommodation in Beirut was actually down by the port side. So straight away, the explosion had issues for us in relation to the accommodation. The political situation is unstable in Lebanon and has been sadly since 1978. And that was another issue for us. So when Charlotte was talking about the risk assessment, we had to risk assess deploying people to an area with an unstable background. Then there was also an economic crisis in Beirut, and there still is in Lebanon. So bringing foreign nationals in, they can become hostages. And we've sad times in Beirut when we had people taken as hostages. So that was another risk factor that we had to look at. And the other issue is the value of the Lebanese pound. It's so poor at the moment. So we knew we wouldn't be able to get local currency. So it was a matter of dealing in dollars. So these are sort of the themes that you don't often consider that actually come into the planning of deploying people to, particularly, as we say, the red spot areas. Added to that would have been the COVID. The hospitals in Beirut were overrun at this stage. We had to check with our team, had any of us been inoculated in relation to COVID. That was another consideration that we had to, a new one that you wouldn't normally have to take in normal times. But mind you, you have to take in inoculations when we're going to Africa and other areas like that. The other aspect out there is that the explosion took out a lot of the electricity. Now, I served in Lebanon on 4 different occasions, and I've been there numerous times since 1978. Electricity was never one of their great assets out there. So again, the withdrawal of electricity, what would that mean to our team? What would that mean to their habilitation, their radios, all of the electrical aspects that you don't really notice until you're there? And then unfortunately at that stage in Beirut, they had a heat wave, and there was huge consequences to that heat wave. Now, I mind you, I'm a man that loves my heat. And I remember saying to Charlotte, don't worry about the heat wave. I'll travel anyway. Just let me go from that aspect of it. So there were a lot of themes that we actually had to consider. Now, with the information that Charlotte had gathered through the who, what, when, where, and the risk, we were then able to put them into different types of groups, as we call it, the target groups. And I'm not going to give you the detail of that because you have to tune in to see how we did that during Congress. And then the types of interventions. We had to be very flexible, as Charlotte was saying. It wasn't just debriefing. There was no case of doing debriefings in relation to this. So again, we'll talk you through the different types of interventions with our flexibility that we had to build into it. We were fortunate enough in the time zone. We're closer than America time zone wise. So that wasn't a major issue for us. Kelly, I was afraid you were going to be calling me at 1 o'clock in the morning here Irish time. That was one of my big fears when I agreed. And Charlotte said to me, make sure she gives us daytime when we're doing it from that aspect. So they're important aspects. So the timing of it, are people available? And because of the electricity outputs, would we be able to communicate with the agency and with their workers by Zoom or by whatever means, by telephone? So that was another consideration that we also had to take into it. And then we had to look at our SafeHaven teams. How many of us were going to be involved? Who was going to take what area? And were we going to take specific groups? So that was the whole strategic planning. It took Saturday, Sunday morning, we were up and we were running. But Saturday, it was a lot of work, Saturday night, a lot of calls, a lot of time actually putting the work into that. So as I said to you, if you want to see the chart really made out, tune in to the PowerPoint.
Well, and those are a lot of different factors that you do have to consider when outlining a strategic plan, for responding to a critical incident like that. So I appreciate you both taking the time to kind of break that down and what that meant with regard to the Beirut explosion. How does SafeHaven determine whether to provide remote support or deploy a CISM team out? And can you elaborate on what's involved when the team is deployed to a hotspot?
Well, our first consideration has to be a physical risk assessment. How secure is the area? And we're fortunate enough, again, between my own background and within our own company, SafeHaven, we actually have international agencies that work with us. So the security aspect of what would happen, regardless, outside of Beirut or wherever we're deploying, you have to look at the safety aspect of it. How we a secure accommodation? How we a security officer that can brief the people on arrival around the cultural aspects of it? What is safe? Where is it safe? Have we got secure accommodation? Have we got transport that we can trust? Have we got an evacuation plan? It's the first thing we look at. If we send somebody in as a CISM team, how do we get them out if something goes wrong? It's one of the major aspects of it. We go through personal security with them, like their telephone, like their credit cards, like their passport, like their inoculation. We also sit down with them and insist that they make out personal wills and powers of attorney for them before they deploy, because that is important. As I said to you earlier on as well, part of our risk assessment is medically, are they medically fit to travel? Have they the inoculations if they're required in an area? Have you got your yellow card that has to go with your passport from that aspect of it? And then when you're on site, if you're giving radios or telephones, we normally use secure phones ourselves because it's the only way we can deal. We're conscious in some of the areas that we would be monitored. So we talk to our crew. We tell them that there will be security there for them. We normally have a security company accompanying a security member, but we will give them advice about closing the doors, locking their lights, changing their routes, not following the same route. Normally I teach people routine, particularly in a time like this. It's the opposite when you're deploying abroad. We have to look at the whole area of changing your routine, different route to the area that you're going to, who are you talking to, do you know who you're talking to? So that whole physical risk assessment has to be carried out prior to that actually deployment. Charlotte, do you want to add to that?
I think the only thing I would add is that, when you're looking at deploying out somewhere, what you have to consider is very different than when you've been asked to respond to an incident that's 10 miles down the road. And there are a lot of, similarities from the CISM perspective. You're going through the same process. But I think the legal duty of care that you have, and you would also want to have for people, for your own teams, is significant. And for us now, we have 2 different partner organisations, both a logistic partner and a legal partner. And everything that we do, like I think I said to you, I'm a systems person. So what Ollie's talking about is a system, and you work through that, and then everything would be reviewed by legal to make sure we've not missed anything. And then also it gets reviewed by a logistic specialist, and that's their area to make sure people get out and back safely. So all I would say is, it can sound very exciting, but there's an awful lot of responsibility that comes with it as well.
Well, like you both said, it's, from responding from having a local CISM team respond, 10 minutes down the road versus abroad is very different. And, when you're responding abroad, it sounds like, there's a lot more extensive factors to consider,
Yep.
That you may not have to think about or consider when responding to a local incident.
And with some areas, we try to tie our team into the local embassy or chargé d'affaires that are there, because you also need those in case of evacuation routes. But in some areas, they're not available to us. So again, that will be part of where we link in with other agencies to make sure that we've an up-to-date security response in the area we might be responding to.
But it's also not always that that extreme. Sometimes I'm thinking of some of the team who had a few days in Croatia pre-COVID. It was very lovely, and so sometimes it's they're great holiday destinations as well. Not that they're on holiday, they're working, but please don't think it's all like that. There are the ones down the road, and there are the ones to the locations that are there's far less risk to go to, and it's not all extreme.
2 different ones I would remember. One was in Mali, which was tough and difficult, I have to say, from security, but also from dealing with personnel. And the second one, we were responding to the Irish Naval Services in the Mediterranean. I gave a talk on it at the last World Congress. But where we had to deploy was to Malta, and we had to spend a week in Malta. It was very harsh, Charlotte. I have to talk to you about going back to Malta, from that aspect of it.
Oh, goodness. Well, so in the UK, does SafeHaven experience any resistance to CISM generally? And or could either of you touch upon that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a great question. I've been fortunate to lecture on psychological crisis response on MSc programs, and it's something I get asked to talk about. And because everybody wonders, is there resistance? And what I would say is that in real terms, on the ground, when an organization needs support, no, Most of the challenge and difficulty is related to now academic circles, and obviously the research can be challenged, and I think you know well, it's flawed for me, which was something I lectured on. But you know, I think that you know, what you see is that it's all about the application, and I haven't. You know, we are, you know, we're a CISM team because for us, it's by far the most comprehensive and effective solution out there. There are lots of different approaches to early intervention, and there's a reason we chose to adopt it. You know, we're an organisation that remains, you know, flexible. If there were other things to take on, then you know, we're always looking at that. But it's an excellent model, excellent response, and I think when the protocols are followed, the feedback that you get from the people that receive that support, organisations themselves are just, you know, very open and very speak very affectionately of the support that they receive because of that.
Yeah, I would.
Don't know whether you want to add anything, Ollie.
I would agree with Charlotte there that I've conducted many interventions around the country here in Ireland and across Europe as well. And I would say that actually the people that receive it, they're actually very grateful for being given the opportunity to actually express what is going on for them. And it shows that their organization cares for them as well by putting something in place. The two most recent reports here from this side of the water, Trina, who carried out the research with the PSNI on the Cochrane report. Her report has published recently, I think it was December 19. She showed, you know, there were faults within the Cochrane report, and that's where we keep falling back. I think we need to forget about it. I think we need to move on. Myself, I'm PRO for the Critical Incident Stress Management Network here in Ireland. We have a strong network of both government and non-government agencies that are actually working together, promoting the whole area of CISM, Critical Incident Stress Management. And we have our own European group as well that we meet regularly. And it's fantastic when you look at the European area, where now it's compulsory for airlines and airline crews to actually have a CISM program in place, including their air traffic controllers. So we're moving on legislation on this side in implementing the whole area. And then in Scotland recently, they're also making a presentation at the World Congress to Angela and her friends, Marion, etc. up there in Scotland, our Celtic cousins, as we call each other. They also have an alliance with both Scotland and with England. And again, it's growing. And where we've introduced it, it has been found to be very, very successful. So no, I don't think it's an issue anymore over here.
Well, I'm certainly glad to hear that, and that more and more agencies and organizations are actually adopting CISM and integrating that into their agency. Well, how did SafeHaven then get involved with the ICISF?
Well, no, in all honesty, gosh, it would have been maybe 5-6 years ago now, and it really stems from the fact that after having done my ICISF training, I think I was aware that although people complete the training and although there are many services that organisations use who ask for crisis support, and they get people who've done a CISM course, they didn't get, still don't get often, the actual full CISM protocol and process as it should be done. And for me, it's not just about the intervention that you do when you're face to face with somebody. You know, there is a reason for the whole system about how you manage interventions themselves and how you manage the team, ensure the welfare of the team, review that, look at training standards. And for me, what I felt was, the feedback generally was that I saw was that if it wasn't us that were doing it, but if organisations were sending out counsellors to sit in a room because there'd been an incident a couple of days before, what would happen is really nobody would go and see them, but the organisation would feel like, well, we asked for a sort of crisis intervention and we did have somebody on site. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's quite a bit of education until you realise, yes, but if nobody makes use of that skill set, is it, have you really ticked the box, in all honesty? And for me, when I looked at it, I felt like the model that the ICISF had put in place, again, you can say it appealed to me because it's a system and I like systems, but the whole rationale behind it and how it functioned worked well. And I felt like if we were going to put our own team together, mm-hmm. Really being a verified team and having that whole process in place was very important. And so that led me down the road to ICISF, really, and the rest is history, as they say. And then Ollie walked into my life a few years after that. So
yeah, I joined ICISF a few years ago, but before that I was with ICISF. I have been for a number of years, and would have met George and Jeff. I won't put a year on it because they might give out to me when I see them then, highlighting maybe years of service. But let's say it wasn't yesterday. So as an authorized instructor, when I joined SafeHaven, SafeHaven had trained, and they had some brilliant trainings carried out. But some of it was ICISF, and then they have their own programs, which I always endorse from that aspect of it. But both Charlotte and I agree that if we're doing CISM training, it's best to have it authenticated and registered properly with ICISF and with the University of Maryland, because we have that backing there. So all of our trainings that we do with CISM, and in fact, we've recently had refresher training. Believe it or not, SafeHaven had refresher training before ICISF even came up with it from that aspect of it. So we have been doing refreshing. And even during this pandemic, we were fortunate, prior to the Beirut breakout, we actually had just refreshed the teams in what we would do, and we were doing it through the Zoom. So SafeHaven is there. Charlotte's on her way to becoming a trained trainer. She's just waiting for the next program to be advertised. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, she missed the last one due to commitments of her own, but she's now fully fledged and ready to go, just waiting to sit with Jeff or George for 5 days to complete the trainer in both individual and group from that aspect of it. Yeah, so SafeHaven, we didn't just fall into ICISF. We're in bed with them, if I can use that expression. I know we're being recorded, so if you want to take that out, this is an Irish fella talking.
That's okay. I appreciate both of your backgrounds and kind of how you got involved with ICISF and CISM training. And I know that you guys have been a part of our ICISF family for quite a while. And we appreciate you guys being approved instructors. Well, let's talk about World Congress. So we kind of touched upon, a couple of questions regarding the Beirut explosion, which is exactly what your World Congress presentation is going to be all about. So what additional information can our viewers expect from your upcoming World Congress presentation later this month?
Well, we'll give them a bit of a background to the actual incident and talk about it. We will definitely, if you're interested in crisis management briefings and strategic planning, then I would strongly recommend you tune in. Don't mind the rest of them. Charlotte and myself will present a very good program that will be enthralling.
Well, I have no doubt. And I, for one, am definitely looking forward to the presentation coming up. Charlotte, did you have anything to add?
I was going to say, technically, as Ollie will tell you, I work and I'll work through technically, and I know my struggles in taking the learning and applying it, particularly when things become more complex.
Mm-hmm.
And so my hope is that not only will we give a little bit more detail about that, but we will then show you how we applied it. And for me, I know that's how I learn. Like, if you can give me an example, I can learn from that. And I suppose it's the one thing I wished I could have had access to, would have been people's minds to go, yeah, but how do you actually take this and apply it as things get more difficult? And so my hope is, for the teams out there that, the people that are thinking of training in CISM, that it provides something that's also technically useful at the same time. And I do hope we manage to be entertaining as well.
And it is different than going to the local police or fire unit or medical unit to do a CISD or an intervention. There is planning. You can't just arrive.
Well, like I said, I'm definitely looking forward about learning more about both the strategic planning side as well as the CMBs with regard to your presentation. So that's awesome.
And implementation, we're going to walk them through, like, what do we do and the key steps. It's not just about you do the strategic planning and then you go and do it. That's only the first bit. So we're going to walk them through the other steps as well.
And we have some key learnings at the end.
Yes.
Which are all important.
Exactly.
Well,
sorry, Kelly, for cutting across you. And this time it won't be in Irish. Last year I started off in Oscuelga, and people were looking at me and I said, no, it's okay. There's 2 slides and then the last slide. So this time it's in English. You don't have to worry, to my audience.
Well, that's good to know. I think that's good for all of our viewers and for our participants that are looking forward to listening in. Well, the ICISF World Congress 16 Wellness Amid Uncertainty is going to be from May 25th through the 27th of 2021.
And we're on the 26th.
Yes, yay! You get to join the ICISF community from around the world at ICISF's Virtual World Congress. This real-time live event features over 100 hours of educational content, opportunities to network with presenters and other participants in small group settings, and even community-wide networking events, and so much more. We have 8 days left to register for World Congress 16. You can learn more about Ollie and Charlotte's World Congress 16 presentation and view other presentations by visiting ICISFCISM We look forward to seeing you all at World Congress 16, Wellness Amid Uncertainty. Today, I'd like to thank both Ollie and Charlotte for joining us for our CISM Live Series, where we connect with CISM subject matter experts live on YouTube. You can join us next week, Wednesday, May 19th at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we speak with Peter Tehan and Rima Afifi about fatalities management workers and COVID-19, stress, coping, and well-being. This is going to be a special World Congress 16 presentation preview. Again, if you've enjoyed the content being shared today, make sure to give this video a like and subscribe to ICISF's YouTube channel so you don't miss out the next time we go live. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Slán. That's goodbye. Slán.